Captain Jake Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber for what he knew would be the last time. The huge room was carved from living crystal that glowed with strange alien light. Once this place had filled him with wonder and hope. Now it felt cold and dead, like a tomb that cared nothing for the pain it had caused. The Zephyrian Chancellor sat on his high throne, his many eyes looking down at Jake with clear hatred. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species watched him with expressions ranging from boredom to disgust. These were the rulers of the galaxy, the ancient civilizations that had built an empire spanning thousands of star systems, and they all saw humanity as nothing more than useful animals. "Human Morrison," the Chancellor said, his voice echoing. "Through the crystal chamber, you stand before this council to answer for your species' continued violations of our laws. Your people keep expanding into space without permission. You build military ships when we told you not to. You refuse to accept that we know what is best for the galaxy." Jake kept his face calm, but inside he was burning with anger. For 3 long years he had served as humanity's voice in this chamber. 3 years of watching his people treated like children who could not be trusted. 3 years of seeing human colonies restricted to worthless planets while other species took the best worlds. 3 years of watching human soldiers die in alien wars while being told they should be grateful for the chance to serve. "Honored Council," Jake said, keeping his voice steady. "Humanity has followed every treaty you made us sign. We have respected every boundary you drew around us. We have given you our technology, our resources, and the lives of our soldiers to defend your territory. And still you treat us like we are somehow less than you." The Vorthak representative, a creature that looked like a giant crystal spider, made a clicking sound that Jake had learned was their way of laughing. "Less than us. Human, your species, has been in space for barely 200 years. We have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years before your planet even had life on it. You breed too fast, fight too much, and refuse to learn your place in the natural order of things." "Our place?" Jake felt his diplomatic training starting to crack. "You mean as your slaves? As soldiers you can throw away in your wars? As the ones who do all the dangerous work while you sit in comfortable chairs and make speeches about how civilized you are?" The chamber erupted in angry sounds from dozens of different alien throats. Some buzzed, some roared, some made musical notes that somehow sounded furious. The Chancellor raised one scaled hand and the room fell silent. "Human Morrison, you forget who you are speaking to. We have been patient with your kind, more patient than we should have been. The human race exists because we allow it. Your colonies, your trade routes, your very homeworld continue to exist only because we have chosen not to destroy them." Jake looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at him. Some showed hatred, others showed nothing at all. A few looked like they might feel sorry for him, but not enough to speak up. Not one of them showed the respect that humanity had earned through blood and sacrifice over the past century. "I see," Jake said quietly. "Then let me make something perfectly clear to you, honored council. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We renounce our membership and all the obligations that came with it. More importantly, we renounce any claim to your protection." The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Even the crystal walls seemed to stop glowing for a moment. "You cannot simply leave," the Chancellor said. And for the first time, Jake heard uncertainty in his voice. The economic damage alone would be enormous. The treaties, the trade agreements, the military cooperation will all end today, Jake interrupted. He reached into his uniform jacket and pulled out a small data crystal, placing it on the speaker's platform in front of him. "This contains our formal Declaration of Independence, signed by every member of the Human Federation Assembly and witnessed by our entire diplomatic staff. As of this moment, every human trade agreement is canceled. All military cooperation has ended. Every research partnership is terminated. Every human worker, soldier, scientist, and citizen will be withdrawn from council space." The Vorthak representative rose up on his thin legs, his crystal body flashing with agitation. "You would cut yourself off from galactic civilization? Return to the darkness of isolation? You will be destroyed by the first hostile aliens that find you. Jake smiled for the first time in months. It felt good. That, honored council, will be humanity's problem to solve. We have faced worse odds before and survived. As Jake turned to leave, his footsteps echoing loudly in the now silent chamber, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had been carrying for years. Behind him, he could hear the first sounds of panic as the council members began to realize what they had just lost. Whispered conversations in a dozen alien languages, all asking the same question. What would they do without the humans? The human delegation filed out behind Jake, their heads held high despite the stares of alien dignitaries and staff who watched them pass. As they walked through the long corridors of the council complex, past paintings and statues celebrating thousands of years of galactic civilization, Jake felt something he had not experienced in years: hope for the future. In the shuttle bay, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes was waiting with the crew of their ship. Her face was serious but determined, and Jake could see in her eyes that she understood what this meant for all of them. "It is done then, sir?" she asked. "It is done, Lisa. Send the signal to Earth immediately. Operation Exodus begins right now." Within hours, human ships throughout Council space began receiving the same message: pack up everything, take anything valuable, and leave. No arguments, no delays, no second thoughts. Humanity was going home, and they were taking everything they had built with them. The first ships began moving before the Council had even finished their emergency session. Human colony transports, cargo haulers, research vessels, and military escorts all started their engines and pointed themselves toward the edge of known space. They moved in complete radio silence, following pre-planned routes that would take them far from Council territory. As Jake watched the last human ship clear the Council capital system, he thought about what they were leaving behind and what they were heading toward. Behind them was a civilization that had never valued what humanity brought to the galaxy. Ahead was the unknown, but at least it would be theirs to face on their own terms. The age of human servitude to the Council was over. What came next would be up to them alone. 3 months had passed since humanity declared their independence from the Galactic Council, and Admiral Kelly Brooks stood on the bridge of the human battleship Independence, watching the most incredible sight of her lifetime. Through the massive viewport, she could see thousands of human ships stretching across the star system like a river of lights flowing toward freedom. "Final count, Commander Parker," she said to her second-in-command. Commander Ryan Parker looked at his datapad and shook his head in amazement. "All civilian evacuations complete, Admiral. We successfully evacuated 37 colony worlds, 42 research stations, and 18 trade hubs. Total people moved: 2.8 billion humans and their families." Kelly nodded slowly. The number still seemed impossible. Moving almost 3 billion people across hundreds of light years while keeping the entire operation secret had been the most complex task in human history. But they had done it. Every human civilian, every piece of important technology, every valuable research project had been safely moved to new colonies beyond Council space. What about our industrial capacity? Completely dismantled and relocated, ma'am. The manufacturing plants, the shipyards, the mining operations, the research laboratories. Everything we could move has been taken to our new territories. What we could not take, we destroyed rather than leave it for the Council to use. Through the tactical displays, Kelly could see the true size of what they had accomplished. Colony. Ships the size of cities carried millions of people toward their new homes. Massive cargo vessels hauled entire factories and mining equipment. Mobile shipyards moved under their own power, ready to begin building new fleets as soon as they reached their destination. Military escorts kept watch for any threats, though none had appeared. This was not just an evacuation. This was the largest migration in the history of the galaxy, and it was happening in complete silence. No communications with Council space, no demands, no threats. Humanity was simply leaving, taking 300 years of development and progress with them. "Admiral," Communications Officer Janet Reed called from her station, "we are receiving the final intelligence reports from our listening posts in Council space. The economic impact of our departure is much worse than we predicted." Kelly was not surprised. For over a century, humanity had been the backbone of Council civilization. They had mined dangerous materials from deadly star systems where other species refused to go. They had fought in wars that alien civilizations considered too costly in lives. Most importantly, they had provided most of the technological innovation in a galaxy that had grown lazy and comfortable. What is the Council doing about it? Mixed responses, ma'am. The Chancellor is publicly saying our departure is temporary, and we will return when we realize our mistake. But our intelligence assets report emergency council sessions, economic collapse in 7 sectors and 3 separate wars heating up now that our peacekeeping forces are gone. Kelly allowed herself a small smile. The Council had spent so long treating humanity as expendable that they had forgotten how essential human work had become. Human miners went into systems too dangerous for other species. Human soldiers fought battles that others would not. Human scientists solved problems that had puzzled galactic civilization for centuries, and now, in just 3 months, all of that expertise and effort had vanished without warning. Admiral, Chief Navigator Amy Roberts announced, "We are approaching the final checkpoint. Once we cross this boundary, we will be completely outside Council space and beyond their ability to track us." Kelly moved to the center of the bridge and looked out at the stars ahead. Somewhere in that darkness in star systems the Council had never bothered to explore, humanity was building something completely new. Something that would not be limited by alien prejudices or ancient bureaucracy. "All ships, this is Admiral Brooks," she announced over the fleet-wide communication channel. "As we cross into free space, I want every human to understand what we have accomplished here. We did not run away like cowards. We chose to leave as free people. We did not abandon civilization. We are going to build a better one." The response came not in words, but in synchronized flashes of navigation lights across thousands of ships. A galaxy worth of human determination condensed into a single moment of unity and purpose. As the massive fleet crossed the invisible line into unexplored space, Kelly thought about the Council session that was probably happening right now, hundreds of light years behind them. She wondered if the alien leaders were finally beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. The humans had not been the junior partners in galactic civilization. They had been the foundation that held it all together. And now that foundation was gone, taking with it everything that had made the Council strong. "Commander Parker, begin Phase 2 communications. Contact our advanced teams and find out what kind of welcome they have prepared for us in our new territory." "Yes, ma'am." "Admiral, if I may say so, I believe we made the right choice." Kelly nodded, watching as the lead ships in the convoy began changing course toward their predetermined destinations. "History will judge whether we were right, Commander. But for the first time in generations, that history will be written by humans for humans." Behind them, Council space continued to exist, unaware that the storm brewing in the darkness between stars was already beyond their ability to stop. The aliens had wanted humanity to know their place in the galactic order. Soon they would learn that humanity's place was wherever they chose to make it. The great ships moved through space in perfect formation, carrying not just people and equipment, but the hopes and dreams of an entire species. They carried the promise that humans could build something better than what they had left behind. They carried the determination to prove that freedom was worth any price. As the last of the human vessels disappeared into the unknown regions beyond Council space, Kelly realized that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The Council had taught humanity an important lesson about the price of freedom. Now it was time for humanity to teach the galaxy about the power of a species that refused to be limited by the fears and prejudices of others. The age of human dependence was over. The age of human independence had begun, and somewhere in the darkness ahead, the future was waiting for them to build it. 8 months after humanity had walked away from the Galactic Council, Chancellor Vexhai stood in his private office staring at holographic displays showing the complete destruction of the Altair mining colony. This was the 3rd such disaster in 3 weeks, and each one made the situation clearer and more terrifying. "Explain to me again," he said to the trembling Altarian administrator who had requested this emergency meeting. How an entire mining operation simply exploded without warning. The insect-like administrator's wings buzzed nervously as he tried to find the right words. Honored Chancellor, our investigation suggests equipment failure. The quantum extractors were operating beyond safe limits when the explosion occurred. We lost everything: the equipment, the extracted materials, and 2,000 workers. Equipment that was maintained by human technicians for 40 years. Interrupted Defense Coordinator Tessera from across the room. Her snake-like body coiled with agitation as she accessed her personal database. Equipment that never failed once during all that time. Equipment that has now failed catastrophically at 17 separate locations since the humans left us. The administrator's compound eyes grew wide with fear. Surely you do not suggest sabotage, Coordinator. I suggest, Thaisara replied coldly, that we never bothered to learn how the humans kept our infrastructure working properly. We simply expected it to continue functioning forever without their expertise. Chancellor Vexhai activated another holographic display, this one showing economic projections that made his stomach turn with nausea. The situation is much worse than equipment failures. Trade revenues have dropped by 38% across all sectors. Raw material shipments from frontier systems have virtually stopped. 3 of our major border conflicts have escalated beyond control, and we may need to commit our own military forces rather than rely on... He stopped speaking as he realized what he had been about to say. Rather than rely on human peacekeeping forces, finished Counselor Morden of the Crystalline Collective. His rocky features glowed with bitter amusement as he spoke the words that everyone was thinking. How refreshing to finally hear honesty in these chambers, Chancellor. Vexhai's scales flushed red with anger and embarrassment. The humans were never truly essential to our operations. They were simply convenient to have around for certain tasks. Convenient, Mordun repeated, his crystal body flickering with what might have been laughter. Yes, it was convenient to have a species willing to mine deadly neutronium in collapsing star systems. Convenient to have soldiers who would fight against impossible odds without question or complaint. Convenient to have scientists who could solve engineering problems that we had given up on centuries ago. Thaisara activated yet another display showing military situations across Council space. The Kethvar border war has claimed 4 Council member worlds in the past month alone. Without human rapid response fleets, we cannot contain their advance into our territory. The Void Hunters have resumed their raids on our shipping lanes. Raids that stopped completely when human patrol squadrons took over enforcement duties. The Omega Research Initiative has stalled entirely without human innovation teams working on breakthrough technologies. We have other member species, the Chancellor protested, though his voice lacked conviction. The Galactic Council represents over 200 different civilizations. 200 civilizations, Morden agreed, his tone making it clear he was stating facts rather than offering comfort, of which exactly 3 are willing to risk their lives in dangerous mining operations. 5 are capable of military operations beyond simple system defense. And none, absolutely none, have shown the technological creativity and innovation to match what humans achieved routinely. The Chancellor was quiet for a long time, staring at the displays showing the slow collapse of everything he had worked to maintain. When he finally spoke again, his voice was much quieter than before. What options do we have available to us? We could attempt to contact them directly, suggested Administrator Keltash from the far-reach territories. Open negotiations for their return to Council space. Perhaps we could offer them better terms than they had before. The silence that followed his suggestion was more telling than any spoken response could have been. We do not know where they went, Thaisara admitted, her voice carrying a note of genuine fear. Every human ship, every colony, every research station, every trace of their civilization has vanished completely. Our best scout ships have searched for months and found nothing but abandoned installations and empty space. It is as if 3 billion people simply disappeared from the galaxy. They must be somewhere, the Chancellor said, though even he could hear the uncertainty in his own words. An entire species does not just vanish without leaving some trace behind. Perhaps not, Morden replied thoughtfully, but a species can certainly choose to remain hidden forever if they decide they never want to be found again. As if his words had summoned bad news, the chamber's emergency alert system suddenly activated with urgent red lights and warning sounds. A new hologram materialized showing Admiral Kyrvac of the Council's 6th Fleet. His uniform was torn and burned, his expression desperate with barely controlled panic. "Honored Council," he said, his voice crackling through battle static. "I report from the Tertian System defense perimeter. Our defense platforms have been destroyed. The Kethvar invasion fleet has broken through all our defensive lines, and they are advancing directly toward the core worlds. We need immediate military reinforcement or our entire sector will fall within days." The transmission suddenly cut to static and disappeared, leaving the council chamber in complete silence. Chancellor Vexhai stared at the empty space where the hologram had been, finally understanding with perfect clarity the true scope of their situation. For over a century, the Galactic Council had grown comfortable and lazy, relying on human competence to handle all the difficult and dangerous work of maintaining their civilization. They had assigned humans all the impossible missions, all the thankless jobs, all the risks that other species considered unacceptable. Now they were learning a hard truth that their ancestors had known, but they had forgotten. In a dangerous and hostile galaxy, survival required more than political speeches and bureaucratic meetings. It required courage, innovation, sacrifice, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary for the greater good. These were qualities the Council species had possessed once long ago in their violent histories, but over time they had let humanity provide these qualities for them instead of maintaining them themselves. "Send emergency orders to all member species," the Chancellor finally commanded, his voice heavy with the weight of impossible decisions. "Full military mobilization across all sectors, complete industrial conversion to war production, and begin a comprehensive search of every star system in our databases. If we can find any trace of human presence anywhere in the galaxy, we must attempt to negotiate their return." As the council members hurried out to implement emergency protocols that might already be too late, Morden remained behind with the Chancellor. "You realize," the crystalline counselor said quietly, "that even if we somehow manage to find them, they may no longer be interested in helping us solve problems we created for ourselves." Vexhai nodded slowly, watching through the crystal walls, as distant explosions lit up the night sky. Another human-built defense platform had just failed catastrophically, leaving another gap in their crumbling defenses. "Then we will have to learn to help ourselves," he said, "just as we should have done centuries ago instead of becoming dependent on others." The age of human dependence was ending in fire and chaos. The question now was whether the Galactic Council could survive long enough to learn the lessons that humanity's departure had taught them. 18 months after the Great Exodus, Director Sam Mitchell stood in the observation deck of humanity's crown, the massive space station that served as the government center of the new Terran Republic. Through the transparent walls, he watched the construction of the 7th colony ship in as many months, its hull gleaming with technologies that would have been impossible during their time under Council rule. "Status report from our Outer Colonies Director," his aide, Lieutenant Colonel. Kate Morgan approached with her daily briefing tablet in hand. "Let me hear the good news," Sam replied, though his eyes remained focused on the shipyard outside. The construction techniques they had developed since leaving Council space were nothing short of revolutionary. Nano-assemblers worked alongside human engineers to build vessels that were larger, faster, and more powerful than anything the known galaxy had ever seen. Colony New Montana reports successful terraforming of their 3rd continent ahead of schedule. Population has reached 800,000 and continues growing rapidly. Colony New California has established our first transdimensional communication network between human settlements. We now have instant communication across our entire territory, something the Council never achieved in 1,000 years. Sam nodded, with satisfaction. The advances in quantum communication alone had surpassed anything the Council had managed in their entire history. Without the restrictions of alien bureaucracy and outdated regulations, human innovation had exploded at a rate that surprised even their own scientists. What about our industrial production? New Pittsburgh has exceeded all projections for heavy manufacturing by 200%. They have completed the first generation of fully autonomous mining platforms that require no human crews for operations, even in the most dangerous star systems. New Detroit reports that their shipyards can now produce vessels 30% larger than Council dreadnoughts, with construction times reduced by more than half. Sam finally turned from the viewport, allowing himself a rare smile. Only 30% larger? That seems like a conservative estimate. Kate grinned back at him. That is just their official report, sir. Unofficial estimates suggest our new heavy cruisers are actually twice the mass of Council ships, with weapon systems that make their defense platforms look like children's toys. The progress was beyond anything they had dared hope for when they first left Council space. Freed from regulations that had limited human expansion and technological development for over a century, the new Terran Republic had grown into something unprecedented in galactic history. 17 major colonies, over 100 research stations, and a military force that existed in complete independence from any external influence or interference. More importantly, they had solved fundamental problems that had plagued galactic civilization for thousands of years. Clean energy generation, faster-than-light communication, rapid terraforming technology, artificial intelligence integration, medical advances that extended human lifespans. Breakthrough after breakthrough had emerged from human laboratories in just 18 months of freedom. Sir, Kate continued, consulting her tablet, we have also received the final reports from our long-range reconnaissance teams operating in Council space. The intelligence they have gathered is quite interesting. In what way? The Council is collapsing much faster than even our most optimistic projections suggested. Their economy has contracted by 60% across all sectors. 7 member species have formally withdrawn from military cooperation agreements. Their response to the Kethvar invasion has been completely inadequate by any reasonable standard. Sam was not surprised by this news. The Council had spent centuries relying on human competence and innovation to maintain their civilization. Without that critical support, they were rediscovering just how unprepared they had become for survival in a hostile galaxy. Any attempts to locate our new territory? Constant efforts, but completely unsuccessful so far. Admiral Brooks's deep space positioning strategy has kept us entirely invisible to their scout ships. As far as the Council leadership knows, humanity simply vanished from existence without leaving any trace behind. Sam moved to the tactical display that showed the current scope of human-controlled space. The new Terran Republic now controlled a volume of territory nearly as large as the entire original Council domain, but located in regions that Council scouts had never bothered to explore or map. Star systems too remote, too dangerous, or simply too uninteresting for their limited attention spans. What the Council had dismissed as worthless frontier space, humanity had transformed into the foundation of a civilization that would reshape the galaxy. Director, Kate said with some hesitation in her voice, there is something else you should know about. We have detected multiple Council emergency transmissions specifically requesting assistance with the Omega Research Initiative. Sam raised an eyebrow with interest. The Omega Project had been the Council's most ambitious scientific undertaking for decades, an attempt to develop defensive technologies capable of stopping the galaxy's most dangerous threats. Human scientists had been the primary researchers before the Exodus, and their departure had apparently brought the entire program to a complete halt. They are specifically requesting human expertise? Not just requesting, sir. The transmission logs indicate they are essentially begging for help. The messages suggest they are facing some kind of existential threat that requires immediate breakthrough technology solutions. Without human innovation, they believe their entire civilization may not survive the next 5 years. Sam considered this information carefully. Part of him felt a small measure of sympathy for his former colleagues in Council space. These were not necessarily bad people, just ones who had been raised in a system that taught them to see humanity as inferior. But a much larger part of him remembered the contempt, the dismissive attitudes, and the constant treatment of humans as expendable second-class citizens. What has been our response to these requests? Kate met his gaze steadily. No response whatsoever, sir. We have maintained complete communication silence and continued focusing on our own development priorities. That policy will continue unchanged. The Council made their choice when they decided humanity was expendable and unworthy of basic respect. Now they can live with the consequences of that decision. As Sam returned to watching the shipyard operations, outside, he reflected on how dramatically everything had changed. The humans who had left Council space 18 months ago had been a displaced and somewhat bitter people fleeing an ungrateful alliance that had never valued their contributions. The humans who now lived in New Terran space were something entirely different. A confident, innovative civilization that had proven they could not only survive on their own, but thrive beyond all reasonable expectations. The Council had assumed that without their guidance and protection, humanity would struggle desperately and eventually return to beg for readmission under any terms offered. Instead, humanity had built something far superior to what they had left behind. Kate, schedule a meeting with the Colonial Assembly for next week. I believe it is time we discussed expansion into the Andromeda approach systems. We have new worlds to explore and a growing civilization that needs room to expand. As his aide departed to arrange the meeting, Sam remained at the viewport watching human engineering create wonders that no Council world had ever imagined possible. In the distance, a new exploration fleet was preparing for departure, ships that would extend human presence even further into unexplored regions of space. The Council had wanted humanity to understand their proper place in the galactic order. Now they were learning that humanity's place was wherever they chose to build it, and they had chosen to build something magnificent. 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days after humanity had walked away from the Galactic Council, the end came not with explosions or battles, but with a simple transmission that appeared on every communication channel in Council space at exactly the same moment. Chancellor Vexhai sat in his private chambers staring at the holographic display that showed the complete scope of what humanity had revealed to the galaxy. The transmission had lasted exactly 37 minutes and had changed everything that the Council thought they knew about their former members. The message had been straightforward and impossible to ignore. Humanity's exact location, the full extent of their new territory, their incredible technological achievements, and most importantly, their final answer to 2 years of desperate Council attempts at communication. "We received your messages," Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison had said, looking directly into the camera with eyes that seemed older, but infinitely more confident than when he had served as their ambassador years before. "All 940, 3 of them. We understand that the Galactic Council faces serious difficulties. We understand that your former territories have become unstable and dangerous. We understand that you desperately need our help to survive." The Chancellor had felt a brief moment of hope when he heard those words, thinking that perhaps humanity would show mercy and return to help save what remained of galactic civilization. "Our response is simple and final. We refuse." Now, hours later, Vexhai struggled to fully understand the implications of everything humanity had chosen to reveal. The new Terran Republic controlled 47 star systems, maintained a population of over 5 billion people, and possessed technologies that made every Council achievement look primitive and outdated by comparison. Even more disturbing was the detailed economic analysis that Jake Morrison had provided during the transmission. Humanity's new civilization had achieved in 2 short years what the Council had failed to accomplish in over 1,000 years of existence. Complete energy independence through fusion and antimatter technologies, fully automated resource extraction from the most dangerous environments, terraforming techniques that could transform dead worlds into garden paradises in months rather than centuries, and a military capacity that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. "They do not need us anymore," Defense Coordinator Thisara said from her position near the window overlooking the capital city. Outside, the lights flickered and went dark in entire sections as another critical infrastructure system failed, without human maintenance. "They never really needed us at all. We were the ones who needed them." The Chancellor nodded slowly, finally accepting a truth he had spent 2 years trying to deny. The past months had been a harsh education in the realities of survival in a hostile galaxy. Without human peacekeepers, 3 major wars had erupted across Council space. Without human miners and engineers, resource shortages had crippled their industrial capacity. Without human scientists and innovators, technological progress had not just slowed but actually reversed in many areas. Meanwhile, the humans had not just survived their exile, they had flourished beyond all imagination. The transmission had included detailed footage of their cities, their massive shipyards, their advanced research facilities. Everything was clean, efficient, and generations ahead of anything the Council possessed. The economic projections are absolutely devastating, Councillor Mordun reported, his crystalline features dim with exhaustion and despair. Without immediate technological assistance from an outside source, our civilization has perhaps 18 months before complete social and economic collapse. The Kethvar offensive has reached our core worlds. Our military reserves are completely exhausted, and now we know with certainty that humanity has developed weapon systems that could end every one of our conflicts in a matter of days. But they will not help us, the Chancellor said, stating the obvious truth that none of them wanted to acknowledge. Would you help us? Thisara asked, turning from the window to face him directly. After the way we treated them for over a century? After the contempt and dismissal and constant reminders that they were somehow less worthy than the rest of us? Vexai had no answer for that question. He remembered Jake Morrison standing in the council chamber 2 years ago, trying desperately to explain humanity's contributions and sacrifices, trying to argue for their right to equal treatment and basic respect. He remembered his own dismissive responses, the arrogant assumptions he had made, the casual contempt with which he and the entire council had treated their most capable and productive member species. There is something else, Morden continued, reluctantly. Our intelligence networks report that humanity has been contacted by 17 different non-council species in the past 6 months alone. Species that are very interested in the benefits and protections that human alliance could provide. The new Terran Republic is actively recruiting new members for what they call the Terran Commonwealth. The implications were staggering and terrifying. Not only had humanity survived their forced exile and built a superior civilization, they were now actively building a rival galactic power that threatened to eclipse the Council entirely. Species that had never been part of Council civilization were eagerly joining the human-led alliance, attracted by promises of technological advancement, economic prosperity, and military protection. Sir, his aide entered the chamber nervously. Urgent transmission from Admiral Kirvak with the remnants of the 6th Fleet. He reports that Kethvar invasion forces have successfully captured the Tertian system. Without immediate reinforcement, our core worlds will fall within 2 weeks. Vexai closed his eyes and felt the weight of absolute defeat settling on his shoulders. The Tertian system had been humanity's former research headquarters, the place where they had developed more than half of the Council's modern technology and defensive systems. Now it was falling to enemies that human forces had held back effortlessly for decades. Send orders to all remaining military units, he commanded, his voice heavy with the knowledge that he was probably issuing the final orders in Council history. Full retreat to the Alpha systems. We will attempt to make our last stand there and hope it buys our people time to evacuate. As his aide hurried away to deliver commands that might already be meaningless, the Chancellor activated one final, holographic display. It showed a tactical comparison between human-controlled space and what remained of Council territory. The new Terran Republic had grown to encompass regions that the Council had never even bothered to explore, while Council space had contracted to less than half its original size and was shrinking every day. We did this to ourselves, he said quietly to the empty room. We had the greatest alliance in galactic history, and we destroyed it because we were too proud and too stupid to treat our equals as equals. Thisara moved closer to his desk, her expression showing a mixture of sympathy and resignation. Chancellor, there is one final option we have not yet discussed. Complete surrender? Unconditional surrender to the new Terran Republic. We request admission as a protectorate under their authority. We accept whatever terms they choose to offer, if they choose to offer any terms at all. Vexai considered. This ultimate humiliation, the proud Galactic Council, rulers of the galaxy for over 1,000 years, reduced to begging for protection from the species they had dismissed as primitive and inferior. The irony was almost poetic in its completeness. And if they refuse our surrender, Then we face extinction with the certain knowledge that we earned every bit of our fate. The Chancellor stood slowly and moved to the window, looking out at a city that had once been the crown jewel of galactic civilization. Now its lights flickered uncertainly, its infrastructure crumbled daily, and its people faced an uncertain future in a galaxy that no longer had room for their arrogance. In the distance, another massive explosion lit up the night sky as yet another piece of human-designed and maintained technology finally gave up after months without proper care. Send the message, he decided, the words painful but necessary. Formal unconditional surrender, complete request for protectorate status, and a full apology. Tell them we finally understand what we lost when we let our pride and prejudice override basic wisdom and decency. As Thyssera departed to compose what would likely be the final diplomatic communication in Council history, Vexhai remained at the window staring into the darkness. Somewhere out there, in star systems the Council had never bothered to explore, humanity was building the future of galactic civilization. The question that would determine the fate of billions was whether that future would include any place for those who had been too arrogant to recognize humanity's true worth when it mattered most.